Okay, hey everyone. Today I'm going to be kind of running down one of the amps that we use pretty much every show. It's a 1983 Peavey Butcher. This was Peavey's answer to the Marshall JCM 800, but it's got some features that the JCM 800 kind of lacked. Just looking at the front panel, it does have a lot of similar features to the JCM 800. It has a high and low gain input, your pre and post gain, 3-band EQ presence, and that's pretty much it. It's a simple one-channel head. But on the front here, you see this is our slave out, and I'll be demonstrating that later. If we go around the back here, you can see that it has 4 speaker outs. This is another thing that the Butcher kind of had over the JCM 800. It was the fact that with these outputs, you could power up to 4 16-ohm enclosures, 16-ohm minimum, of course. Also on the back here is this hum balancer, which you just basically sit there with a screwdriver and twist it until your hum goes down and then just kind of leave it. It varies from outlet to outlet, and it's probably something that you should adjust every month or so just to be safe. Back to the amp. Like I said, this was Peavey's answer back in the early 80s to the Marshall JCM 800, but it's got a lot more crunchiness in the upper mid-range. The construction is it's basically 3/4 wood / melted down samurai sword enclosure. I always joke that these heads are basically indestructible, and if you drop one on a venue floor, then yeah, the venue owner is going to be pissed because there's going to be a chunk missing out of their floor. Today for this demo, we're going to be running it in 4 ohms into our special little Line 6 Spider 2 cab. Before you start laughing, it's actually a pretty nice cab. As a lot of people have stated, these do have a really raw, kind of pretty much JCM 800 with a little more bite tone, but they do clean up really well when you back off the gain. So I'm going to start out clean and then just kind of gradually work my way up with what you can do with these. Now, the way that I typically use this one live is down on my pedal board. I have one of the 666 Dragonfly BM1 black metal pedals. And basically my controls are everything at 5 except the tone knob, which is all the way down. And basically you should be able to hear the difference between the normal tone with my volume knob all the way out open and when I set the pedal on. So I'm going to play a little bit with it off, and then I'm going to step on the pedal so you can kind of hear the difference to how this head reacts to a boost with something like this. So as you can hear, it tacked on a lot of saturation there. And because I had the tone knob turned down, it actually brought a little more in the low mids and brought up some body in it. And well, now the one feature that I do want to talk about that we haven't quite gotten to yet is this. It says booster output, which is kind of misleading because I've heard people confuse that for something you put a boost pedal into, and that's totally not the case. It says output, obviously, but what that is just a fancy way of saying slave out. And for those of you who don't know what a slave out is basically where the head that you're slaving out of, the master head is mostly called, retains all control over itself, and it still powers a cab by itself. But it essentially splits the preamp signal so it can take over the power section of another head. And to demonstrate it here, my Laney's at the amp doctor right now, so I couldn't really use it as a slave to demonstrate it. But I take the slave out from the butcher and I put it into the power amp in on this head, which on some heads would be called on older heads it would be called a slave in, but because this has an effects loop, it's just called the power amp in. And basically what it does is, however loud I turn up the butcher, it proportionally increases the volume of this head. So let's take a look and see how that comes together. And you can bounce back and forth between the cabs, and you can tell that the volumes are pretty roughly equal. So I'm going to play a little bit through that to show how the slave works and how it kind of, there's my phone going off, but how it translates into the slave head. Basically the rundown of the butcher. Like I said, these heads are pretty much indestructible. This one we picked up on eBay for $300, and for $300 you get an amp that kind of picks up the slack for a few things that the JCM 800 kind of missed on, and plus it's pretty much an indestructible amp. I would pretty much recommend the Butcher to anybody in any kind of band that requires a lot of amplification, whether you play just straightforward blues rock or if you're even going into death metal territory. A lot of guys will treat it like a JCM 800 and find out that it works just as well, if not better, because of the added mid-range. For death metal, I've gotten really good results boosting it with a Boss Metal Zone with the distortion knob all the way down, or sometimes a little bit up depending on how much saturation you're really going for. But overall, if you're going to be using it for metal, you are going to probably want a boost of some kind. Like, I prefer the black metal pedal, but tube screamers work really well with it, metal zones work well with it, big muffs. Pretty much anything you would normally boost any other amp with will work pretty well with this. It treats pedals very nicely. I hope this has been helpful. If you need any more information on the Butcher, get a hold of us if you have any questions, or go talk to the helpful people over at 7string.org or Forever Doomed, one of those two boards I'm usually on, so hit us up.